Okay, so now we can go ahead into the details of the leg. And I'm actually starting off in max here. I'm creating what's going to be a piston after I'm done editing it. And I really just created this in max because it was a tad bit easier and quicker to make sure that everything was lined up properly. And so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and make this very, very simple. I'm not going to add any details to it. So I'm going to make some edge loops in here so when I subdivide it, it keeps the strong edges that I want. And delete the extras. And create a few more here. And then one more at the end. I'm actually going to go ahead and subdivide this as well, because when you have triangles at the bottom of a cylinder, you can get some pinching when you subdivide. Okay, so now I've kind of rotated it into place using a guide mesh that I exported from ZBrush, and just to kind of tell me where things were. And then I went ahead and re-imported it into ZBrush. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Subtool Master to mirror this all over. There we go. And so for the details, pretty much throughout the whole character, I'm going to be doing three things, essentially. Or three overarching things. I'm going to be creating smaller doodads, smaller meshes, to kind of bridge certain areas that don't look like they belong together. And just for various other details as well. And then I'm going to be doing a lot of tubing, which we'll mainly focus on in the lower torso section, but we're going to be doing some in here as well. And then we're going to be doing modifications to the clean meshes that we've already made. So just kind of cuts into it, or anything really, anything that looks good. And so I'm going to start with a few doodads, just little meshes here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the clipping brush to unify this all together. And then group loops to smooth the edges. Alright, so I need to use the Damien standard brush to kind of make a cut into this, to give it more depth, to make it feel like it's not just one chunk of metal. So there we go, that should work fairly well. And now for the calf, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of create a spinal effect just by using repetition of objects going down the center of the calf. So I'm just going to go ahead and mask from the inner areas of the leg and create new objects through extraction. Alright, so this one wasn't quite in place, so I had to go ahead and use the move brush to fix that. And just like the previous ones, I'm going to go ahead and cut all this and throw in some group loops. Okay, so this is the final one for the spinal effect in the calf area. And again, we could just use our regular cutting technique. And it's kind of, it looks a little bit out of place right now, so I'm going to go ahead and use the move brush to unify that a bit. Okay, so you see I've put in a few Z-spheres onto the inner side of the knee area. And what I'm trying to do here is make it look like a complex network of tubing, essentially. So you see I have tubes kind of folding over each other And as complex as it looks, it's actually really simple. Um, just kind of, if you have one tube that goes under another tube, you should have it go over the tube at a later point in the actual mesh. So you can see I've kind of got this spiraling effect with the tubes. But I'm focusing on doodads right now. Just trying to bridge the tubes. Because if you leave the tubes by themselves, it gets really lonely in there. So go ahead and add some friends for them. Any kind of mechanical detail that you can push out. So I need to kind of duplicate these tubes around. And the important thing I said during the fundamentals video is that you should never spend too much, not too much time, but you should never put too many points of articulation into your Z-spheres, only as many as you need. And so here I'm just creating another doodad, and I created an extraction, and I'm going to use this extraction to create another extraction, just by unmasking certain areas. So I made a polygroup from masking. I'm just going to go ahead and extract this. And then use group loops to smooth out the inner side of that. So we get nice lines. And that creates a pretty cool detail. Alright, and so now one of the major things we need to create is the ankle detail. The area of the ankle that appears to make it look like the foot can move, the foot can rotate. It has a pivot. And so this is what we're going to use to simulate the pivot. So I have radial symmetry on, and I'm just using all the brushes that make a hard surface model work. The clip brushes and the trim dynamic and the H polish brushes. And what I'm trying to do is create this circular effect that that everything kind of centers around this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a cut into this, and then use trim hole to bring it back out. And I changed I lowered the amount of, or the radial count, just to make that little plating area that looks like it holds everything together. And so I'm using the Damien standard brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and switch my morph target. I actually stored a morph target before I created those cuts, so I could pull that back in and make it one more piece again. And now I'm just going to use the pinch brush to pull this all together. Since the Damien standard brush actually creates a little bit bigger cuts than I have for this mesh, or for this character. So I'm going to have to use the Damien standard brush and the pinch brush in combination to actually make it look like it fits. Okay, so after I've created that, I'm just going to go ahead and scale it to size and then move it into place. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to look perfect, which is completely different. It's not the same thing. You can get away with a lot doing that. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of scale it to about the size that the placeholder is. And once I have it in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate that mesh. And to make it look like it actually fits in and that it's supposed to be there, I've inflated this area a little bit and smoothed it out. And I'm going to create extractions that, little doodads that we were talking about, the sort of meshes that unify everything and make everything look like it's part of a whole instead of just separate things. So I've created an extraction. I'm just going to use the clip circle center brush to get the perfect circle on that. So we can go ahead and cut that out. And I'm just going to create 3 of these on each side to make it look cool. Alright, so I'm trying to even them out as much as possible so they look really even, so it doesn't matter if they're actually even. And I'm going to go ahead and create some more doodads by first defining where I want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a cut. And then I'm going to pop over into shadow box here and turn off perspective and create a little protrusion here. I'm going to kind of mask out the area I want. I'm actually going to need a top view as well. So alright, so once I have that mesh, I'm going to go ahead and cut it up, or cut up the edges. And then use my trim dynamic and H polish brushes to really get some nice surfaces there. So I'm using trim dynamic right now, just trying to cut a little direction change here. And once you're done with the trim dynamic, you just use the H polish brush to clean it up. And so down here, I'm trying to remember the detail I have going at the top, which is basically the plating over plating with kind of a 3-hole detail in it. So I'm going to go ahead and extract this, and then use group loops. And then once I clean up the edges, I can go ahead and cut the holes in. And you notice I actually didn't cut the holes into the mesh that I extracted. And the reason I did that is because I can just go ahead and use a brush to push that in. Either way works fine, and they look pretty consistent, so it's not a problem that I need to stick to one style or another. It's just really what works at the time. So just trying to kind of create another doodad here. And then I really want to make this plating down here, this little area that has a hole in it, and I just kind of want to make it look like it folds around, allowing for more movement of the legs. But it actually is it's kind of like still a piece of armor. It'll deflect a bullet or two, I guess, before it fails, but it's better to have it there than not have it there, I guess. The guy will be happy that it's there. Alright, and a few more details down here. I'm just going to go ahead and mask out certain areas and then change the polygroups. And then I'm going to use my new polygroup to extract a new mesh with some holes in it. Right there, I accidentally just there's still a little bit masked when I hit everything else, so it extracted everything that was masked. And so there we go. I can just use the clip circle center to clean these circles up. Alright, so I'm doing the same thing I did on the outside of the leg, on the inside of the leg, just creating a little detail with the 3-hole theme that we're all so familiar with. And you can see I've actually added a lot more extractions to the foot, to the actual foot. I've added more kind of grips and stuff. And those are really basic things to do. Most of them are just standard extractions that you can see, especially on the bottom. And then I use the trim dynamic to create the angular effect on it, similar to this area we see in the upper leg right here. And then I used a few shadow box elements as well to kind of create more detail. Right now I'm just trying to create some latches here to unify these two pieces, the underside and the top side, to make it look like it kind of snaps into place, or can snap into place if it needs to. And then to further unify this, I can just I want to make one more larger extraction to kind of make the upper part hug the latches that we have. I'm going to go ahead and unmask the area that the actual latch is, so we can get some nice bevels at the edge of the mesh that we're creating. And so we don't make it look like there's tons of clipping in the mesh. Clipping can be okay at times, but I don't think this is the best place to do it. So I separated out the poly group, and the first extraction you can see here is not really going to work. I originally wanted to make it sharp like that so it would actually conform to the edge, but I found that creating a more rounded version would not only give me nicer edges, but I could actually fix it up pretty quick to make it look like it would hug the outside areas. And so this is pretty much the final leg. There's not much more that needs to be done to it, so we can go ahead and move on to the other areas.